hi, it's Dr. Parikh, and weird things just happened that I wasn't expecting. So now we're going to talk about how to take notes on a peer-reviewed article as my daylight is fading. It's January, so that means it's 5 o'clock. So the article that I showed you in the last video about the mental health impact of the 2010 Haiti earthquake, I actually have an example of article notes. So I'm going to have a few documents floating. I'm probably going to cover up my video, my face at some point, just so you can see more things on the screen that I care about you seeing more. So if you look, you can find this in Blackboard under templates. It's also linked to in a lot of the assignments that use it. And so you can see I have a description of exactly what goes in each place. So this document is pretty good to look at to get a sense of, and again, I try to write this as conversationally as I can, like I'm sitting, just like I'm writing a script for a video, so that it sounds like I'm talking you through it. But I also have, where did it get buried? There. I have a sample. So I have actually, in this article, I use this, one of the measures from this article, the PCLC, the Post-Traumatic Checklist for Civilians. I use that for my measure a little later. So you'll see this article a lot. Let me see if I can make myself a little smaller so you still get a little bit of that sense that I'm sitting there talking to you, but it takes up a little less space. So you can see first I want your reference, just like you're going to have it in your reference list, and you'll already have turned, by the time you get to this step, which is a little down the line, you'll already have turned in your reference list. So you'll just copy your reference and keywords. Now you can look at some of the keywords from here, but I actually just wrote my own. It's kind of for your reference. What are the important parts of this paper? For here, so what's written in just normal font? Oh, I missed a period there. Well, I'll live. So what's written in normal font is actually what my response would be. And then in italics are my notes to you, where I'm, for example, I tell you on the PDF version exactly where you can find things. Now, instead of listing the PDF, I actually have a link to view it at the library, because you can view it as HTML or PDF. It makes it a little easier, especially if you need a screen reader. That way you can access the HTML copy, because the PDF can be kind of rough. But you can download the PDF from the library website. It's an article that you can access the full text through the library. You can also just search the title in the library like I showed you in the last video. So the first thing you're going to do for your notes is you're going to look at just I call it literature review, introduction, basically their background. You're going to look for 3 key ideas. And you can include more than that if you want, but that's the minimum. So 3 ideas of what's something that's important that they've already talked about. And you want to cite, so a few rules, this needs to be in your words, no copying and pasting. You need to make sure you're rephrasing it, and I talk about that as I go, and sometimes it's really hard to just rephrase a single sentence. Look at several sentences at a time and think about how you can rephrase that whole idea. It makes it a lot easier. Make sure that you are citing correctly. Follow your APA style rules. I use Messiah et al. From the beginning because there are so gosh darned many authors. If you have more than 5 authors, you just use et al. Every time. If there were 2 to 3, I would do, if there were 3 to 5, I would list all of them the first time and do et al. After that. 2, you just list both every time. 1 is the easiest. So I went through and I picked out and this is a pretty short introduction, but I still found 3 points that could be useful. So things that you think you might be interested, or what were the most important ones. Next, it goes into who was in the study. And so I tried to describe as much as possible who was in the study. And in mine, you'd think that it would be under the methods section where it talks about participants, but no, in mine it's actually, most of this is in results when it said survey respondents and respondent demographics. Measures, you're going to list every measure. You might just have 1 or 2, you might have 10. But you're going to list each measure and just a little, what's the measure name? What is it meant to do? And does it have any subcategories? Are there any subtests that are being used? And then I want you to write, what is the basic research question? Now, sometimes they will say very clearly the research question is, or the hypotheses are. It would be fine to include hypotheses there too. A research question is a broader, like, does this affect this, or does this predict this? Is this higher than this? Whereas a hypothesis is a specific guess that they will be different. You know, this will be different than this, or this will be higher in men than it is in women. You're making a prediction. That's the difference. You can also often, in that first paragraph of the discussion, that secret summary that I told you about, that one often has a nice statement of the research question. And just like everything else in this document, I expect it to be in your words. I actually didn't cite there. You could cite. I'm not going to be nitpicky because I also don't think that this is something you're going to copy and paste into your paper. Whereas up here, these statements, I very much expect you'll probably copy and paste some of them directly into your paper. So if you leave out a citation now, there's a good chance you'll forget to cite later. So it's a little more important to me in these sort of three summaries. You need to figure out what's the independent variable, and I talk about how you figure that out in the documents. The independent is the predictor. It's the one that you're manipulating, or it might be something you can't manipulate, like you can't assign someone to have a biological sex of woman or to have a gender identity of female. Like you don't get to assign those things. You can't assign my age to me. You can't manipulate. You would not ethically manipulate whether I've had a death loss or not. We have no true experimental studies in grief, or very few, because if we're comparing grieving and non-grieving people, I'm not gonna decide whose grandma gets to live. So some things you just can't study through manipulations, but that's still your independent variable if that's how you're dividing the groups, or if that's really the difference, the starting point difference you're looking at. And then the dependent variable, that's the one you're trying to measure the outcome of. That's the one you'd like to be able to ultimately change. Like, for example, well-being. We would typically like to make well-being higher. So we want to know if well-being is different between men and women, because then we would know, okay, maybe whoever's well-being is lower, maybe we need to look at why that is and if there's something we can do about it. Because it's probably not the anatomy that I have that magically makes my well-being lower. So you want to think about what's the predictor and what's the outcome, or the independent variable and the dependent variable. And then you're going to talk about 3 points that are from their findings. The discussion section is by far the easiest place to find this. So you want to look through. On a side note, sometimes, I do actually look at your original articles, and when I see that everything that you're talking about comes from the abstract in the first paragraph, it's not a great impression. It does not make a great impression on me of you as a writer and as a student. So you want to make sure you're actually looking beyond the abstract. Although the abstract would be another good place to find these findings, make sure you're looking at more than just the abstract in the first page. You really want to look through the entire article. And again, I understand you're probably not going to understand all of it yet because you just don't have that training yet, but you need to start looking at it. And then the last thing is you need to attach a PDF of the original article. And remember, there's a naming convention, so you do, just like I did on this file, you do the author's name, and then in parentheses you do the year, just like for a citation, and then you just type out the title. If there's a colon, your computer's not going to like that, so just use a dash instead of the colon. So that is how you complete the article note. Thanks. Bye.